Welcome to the Boar's coverage of the 2026 SU Spring Officer elections. We're offering all candidates for full-time officer positions an interview with a member of our team ahead of Big Decision Night. I'm Hannah Guthrie, one of the Boar's many news deputy editors, and today I'll be interviewing James for position of VP DDO in the upcoming elections. Welcome, James. My first question is, why did you decide to run for this position, and what makes you stand out from other candidates hoping to be DDO?
Yes, I think the main reason I decided to rerun for the position I'm currently in is because I've done, I think, quite a lot of work this year. I'd really like to see some of that through in the second term. So I've done lots of stuff on the buses, for example, and I'd really love to continue trying to make sure that that's an institutional priority in the next year. Done loads of really cool things about the democracy review and making sure that the elections are as good as they can be. I'd be really looking forward to run an even bigger and better set of elections if I was to be re-elected. And yeah, I've done lots of really great work on sustainability and to hold the university to account. And again, I've built up some really great relationships that I'd love to continue if I was re-elected, so we can deliver for students. Really, more generally, I think this officer team has done a real lot of work to try to turn the SU around and truly make sure it's a student-led and student-focused organisation which really fights for students' rights and lobbies on their behalf to the university. And I think I'd love to continue implementing that culture into the SU in a second term. I think what sets me apart from the other candidates, firstly, is probably my experience. As I've said, I've been in this role for a year. I think I've done a lot of good work, and hopefully my record reflects that. But I think more generally, what sets me apart is sort of my philosophy of having to make sure the SU is really a student-led organisation, and that students are at the heart of every single decision we make, not the university, not SU staff. That it is really truly student-led. So yeah, and I think I've got the experience and the skills to back that up. I've built some really great relationships with the university, with Students' Union, staff and trustees this year. And yeah, I'd love to continue that to deliver for students in a second term.
Okay, great. My second question is, an independent review last year described the position of DDO as more operational and less politicised than other full-time officer roles. Do you agree with that, and why?
I think I agree that the role has become that. I think I would agree with that my role has become increasingly operational and less political. But I don't think that necessarily leads to the conclusion that the report suggested, was just to scrap it. In fact, I think I've done a lot of work this year to try to repoliticize this role and to really show the value in having a student with lead over democracy and commercial affairs. And I think, yeah, the report took all the wrong lessons from that finding, which is actually this role should be de-operationalized with the support of a strong student voice team, and to create a really strong and thriving democracy at Warwick Students' Union, as well as actually having more student and officer oversight over our commercial affairs, whether that be Curiosity, the Duck, T-Bar, Food Station, etc., as opposed to having less and leaving it all in the hands of unelected staff members.
Great, thank you. With declining turnout and engagement in recent SU elections, how would you adapt the SU's strategy to make SU democracy more accessible, inclusive, and engaging to the wider student body?
Yeah, I think I'd first challenge the assertion that turnout and engagement has declined. Last year, we saw a record amount of turnout, obviously in quite unique circumstances, but it does go to show that people do care when something is on the line. And secondly, this year we've had a record number of election candidates. So these are the biggest elections we've had in the last 5 years. Probably before that, although records don't necessarily tell us the full story. But yeah, we've had an absolutely amazing amount of candidates. Every single position is quite heavily contested. And I think there's some really exciting races. And I think if I look across the candidates that we've got, some really high quality candidates that are just going to lose because there's other really high quality candidates in those positions as well. So yeah, I definitely challenge the fact that turnout is declining. I think we are actually seeing a resurgence in turnout and engagement with our democratic structures. Obviously, there's still a lot further to go. Don't think anyone would say there's not further to go. Hence why this year I've been tasked by the board and have been commissioning a really successful democracy review. I literally just had one of those meetings this morning with students, trustees, and some of our officer team, both part-time and full-time, to really figure out what the next direction is for Warwick SU in terms of the democratic structures. So obviously we've had the report last year that you mentioned in the previous question. So we're taking any lessons from that, but really making sure that, again, this is student-led and not just an external consultant telling us what to do, but actually students are deciding on their own democracy and what will work for them, whether that be from postgraduate representation to the representation of marginalised groups such as trans and LGBTQ students, how our student council functions, what our officers look like. And yeah, I'm really excited for that concluding. The results of that should conclude next term. And then hopefully that can be implemented next year, hopefully by me if I'm re-elected, but if not, then by my successor, who hopefully will leave with a really great set of recommendations to implement to really take Warwick SU's democracy and engagement to the next level.
Great, thank you. As a sabbatical officer leading on sustainability, what new initiatives or services would you implement to extend the current sustainability efforts of the SU?
Yes, this is something that's been a priority for me this year. As of about yesterday, there is now a new sustainability page on the SU website, which keeps track of what we've been doing and holds basically us to account to ourselves, but also says it's a really great resource for students wanting to get involved in sustainability, whether that be through our various great sustainability societies, such as Clothes Circuit, the Greens, Climate Justice, etc., or through our own sustainability forum, which has done loads of really great work. This year, they ran Green Week. They've been doing LEAF, which is about sustainable standards in labs, for example, and really working really closely hand in hand with the university to push the university further to support those sustainability aims. And so if I was re-elected as VPGT and responsible for sustainability, I continue doing that. I've had loads of great wins this year on sustainability. Spoke in favor of an eco park at UEC, which is the Environment Committee, and that got approved. And so hopefully next year I'll be looking to really make sure that project is carried out in full and is funded by the university in their capital plan, because currently it's technically unfunded at the moment. But that would be a really great resource for students and staff and in general the wider community in Coventry and Warwickshire and the surrounding areas to really get engaged with sustainability, have some basically habitat land south of the sports centre where it's currently basically just fields, not sports fields, just random fields. So yeah, that would be something I'd love to push. I passed this year a new sustainable and ethical procurement policy through the SU, which sets out which companies we should and shouldn't work with based on ethical objections to their practices. And that's, again, been a step change from previous years. So, previous years we've taken money and the previous president defended taking money from, for example, from Qatar Airways. But this year, we as an officer team took a really strong ethical stance on that. And as a state-owned company owned by states with a litany of human rights abuses, we said no, and we took that ethical stance. And that's something that I'd really love to embed in a second term, is that ethical stance by default, as opposed to officer teams having to take those decisions continuously. And I'd review all the current procurement and partnerships that we have in the SU against that policy to make sure that we're really compliant with that and making sure that the SU is as sustainable and ethical for students as possible. And then finally, I work really closely with the environment ethics part-time officer. Again, I look at the candidate list for that, and there's loads of great candidates. Whoever is elected out of there, I'd work really closely with them to make sure their manifesto priorities are realised, and they get their support from a full-time member of staff like myself that they deserve.
Great, thank you. My final question. As DDO, you'll sit with the SU president on the University Council. How would you ensure that students' interests are communicated and represented at this higher level?
Yeah. Just to clarify, I don't sit on University Council anymore with the president.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not the same interview as last year because I also told them that then. But regardless, the committee that I do sit on the president with is the University Estates and Environment Committee. And so there I've absolutely stood up for student interest every step of the way, whether that be on the university's net zero plans and their absolute reduction climate targets. Me and Elijah successfully lobbied UEC this year to maintain its commitment about offsetting climate, to make sure offsetting isn't used as an excuse to further expansion at the expense of the climate. We also raised this year the buses for the first time at UEC, and made the university aware of just how pressing a problem this is for students. We raised that in front of university council members, as well as really, really senior university staff, like the finance director and Stuart Croft, to really get them aware and to get that on the agenda. And I'm having meetings with one of the senior university council members next week. Sorry, not next week, there's elections, but the week after, to really press forward on the buses. So yeah, I think for me, it's about using the committees that we sit on as officers to really push for student-focused and student-led initiatives and solutions that impact students and not just sort of kowtowing to the university at every possible opportunity, like I feel probably previous officers have done. But otherwise, it's the education officer that sits on council, and I know that the current education officer, and I hope future education officers will do really great work in improving the SU and university relationship on council, and making sure again that we're delivering for students every step of the way.
Great, thank you. That concludes all of the questions. So thank you so much for answering them.